Evelyn Harper pressed her fingers gently against the little girl's abdomen. It felt tight, as a drum swollen beneath the thin cotton of her nightgown, unnaturally firm in a way no simple fever could explain. The child did not cry out. She did not flinch or pull away. She simply looked up with gray eyes that were entirely too old for her 7-year-old face and whispered, "Please don't tell anyone." Evelyn's hand went completely still. She had been in this house for less than 6 hours, and already she could feel the edges of a dark, suffocating secret pressing in on her. The stagecoach had rolled into Dunmore, Wyoming on a Tuesday, a detail Evelyn would later remember as the most ordinary part of the most extraordinary day of her life. She had not slept the night before. In truth, she had not slept well in 3 weeks. After her mother died and their Missouri farmstead was auctioned off to pay inherited debts, Evelyn was left with nothing but her honesty, a worn leather traveling trunk, and a letter. The letter was from a man named Daniel Mercer. His handwriting was careful and evenly spaced. He had written that he needed a wife who was capable, steady, and did not frighten easily. Evelyn had written back, assuring him she was exactly those things. She hadn't told him she was terrified, though she refused to let it show. As the coach lurched to a halt, Evelyn stepped down into the biting Wyoming air, smelling of pine resin and distant snow. She was a large, full-figured woman, wide-shouldered and sturdy. She carried herself with her chin level and her eyes forward. She had learned early in life that the world rarely made room for women who shrank, so she simply refused to shrink. Daniel Mercer was late, 7 minutes late by her mother's silver watch. When he finally arrived, walking with the heavy, deliberate boots of a man who worked hard ground, Evelyn appraised him. He was lean, stripped down to raw muscle and necessity, wearing a battered hat low over dark eyes. He looked at her with the calculating gaze of a man coming face to face with a reality he had only read about on paper. Evelyn did not look away. "Miss Harper," he said. It wasn't a question. "Mr. Mercer." His grip was firm and dry. He picked up her trunk without being asked, and they rode out to the ranch in a silence that suited Evelyn perfectly. She had never believed in filling the quiet just for the sake of it. During the 40-minute ride through the vast wind-bent Wyoming grass, she recalled the sparse details of his letters. He had a 7-year-old daughter named Lily, a quiet child. His wife, Clara, had died of a fast-moving fever 2 years ago. His household was currently managed by Clara's older sister, Margaret. When the 2-story weathered ranch house came into view, the front door was already open. The woman standing in the frame was perhaps 45, sharp-featured, and impeccably neat. She wore a clean apron over a pressed blue dress and carried herself with the absolute posture of a woman who controlled her domain. "Margaret," Daniel said as they approached the porch, "this is Evelyn Harper." "Miss Harper." Margaret's voice was pleasant, but it was a precise, calculated pleasantness, the exact way a heavy door clicks shut. Her eyes swept over Evelyn, measuring and dismissing her in the same breath. "We've been expecting you. Come in out of the cold." Inside, the house was immaculate, but it felt less like a home and more like a fortress. At the bottom of the straight wooden staircase sat a little girl. She was small for her age, her dark hair woven into a tight, careful braid. She sat with her hands folded perfectly in her lap, her ankles crossed, watching Evelyn with large, hyper-vigilant gray eyes. It was the forced composure of a child who had learned how to make herself entirely invisible. "Hello, Lily," Evelyn said warmly. "Hello, ma'am," the child replied. Her voice was breathy and practiced. "You don't have to call me ma'am. You can call me Evelyn." For a fraction of a second, Lily's eyes darted past Evelyn, looking at Margaret for silent permission. Only then did she whisper, "Yes, ma'am." Evelyn kept her smile easy, but her mind catalogued that terrifying brief glance. Dinner that evening was a heavy beef stew. Daniel sat at the head of the table, Margaret opposite Evelyn, exuding the territorial authority of a woman who considered the house hers. Lily sat beside her father, staring at her bowl. "Eat more, sweetheart," Daniel prompted gently. "I'm not hungry, Papa." "You need to eat," Yes, Papa. Lily took a minuscule spoonful, swallowing with a visible wincing effort. Evelyn watched closely. The child wasn't being defiant. Eating physically cost her something. After dinner, Margaret retrieved a small brown glass bottle from the kitchen shelf. She measured out a spoonful of thick, dark syrup with the brisk efficiency of a daily ritual. Her evening medicine, Margaret explained to Daniel, though her eyes flicked to Evelyn. Dr. Ferris prescribed it for her stomach complaints. It settles her. Open up, Lily, Daniel said. The girl opened her mouth with a blank, exhausted resignation, the look of someone who had stopped expecting things to taste good long ago. Margaret tipped the spoon in. Within minutes, Lily's blinking slowed, her posture slumped, a deep, unnatural slackness taking over her small features. How long has she been taking it? Evelyn asked, trying to keep her tone casual. 8 months, Margaret replied, placing the bottle back on the high shelf. Ever since her mother passed. Grief affects a child's digestion. Dr. Ferris knows her constitution. What kind of stomach trouble? Margaret turned, her eyes narrowing slightly. The kind a child gets when she has been through too much loss, which I imagine a woman of your background would understand. Evelyn filed the barb away and said nothing. Later that night, unable to sleep, Evelyn lay in her narrow bed. The image of the brown bottle and Lily's deadened eyes kept her awake. Just past midnight, she heard a low, stifled whimper from down the hall. Evelyn moved through the dark house by feel. Lily's bedroom door was cracked open. Inside, the little girl was curled tightly on her side, gripping her stomach, her face contorted in absolute agony. Her eyes were wide open, terrified, as if she had been dreading someone walking in. Evelyn crouched beside the bed. Lily? I'm fine. The girl gasped instantly, a rehearsed, panic-stricken reflex. I'm supposed to sleep. I'm not supposed to make trouble. It's not trouble to hurt, sweetheart, Evelyn said softly. Where does it hurt? A long, agonizing silence. My middle, Lily finally whispered. It hurts in my middle after I eat. Evelyn reached out, giving the child time to pull away. But Lily didn't. Evelyn gently pressed her hand against the girl's abdomen. Beneath the thin nightgown, her stomach was severely distended hard and swollen in a way that had nothing to do with a large meal. Has the doctor looked at this? Evelyn asked, keeping her voice perfectly steady. Your belly? Aunt Margaret says the medicine will fix it. How long has your belly been like this? Lily stopped. Evelyn could see the gears turning in the child's head, measuring the danger of speaking. Since I started the medicine, she whispered, as if the words were a sin. Does it help? Lily stared at the ceiling, a single tear slipping down her temple. It makes me sleep. It makes the noise stop in my head. But in the morning my belly is tighter. She looked back at Evelyn, her chin trembling. Aunt Margaret says I'm not supposed to talk about my belly to strangers. Am I a stranger? You were this morning. And now? Lily thought about it with heartbreaking seriousness. You came in the dark, she concluded softly. Strangers don't do that. Evelyn pulled the quilt up around the girl's trembling shoulders. If it hurts again, you call for me. That is what I am here for. Do you understand? Lily stared at her, as if reading a language she had been told didn't exist. Yes, ma'am, Evelyn. Evelyn stayed until the child finally drifted off. When she returned to her own room, she sat on the edge of the bed in the pitch black. 8 months of medicine that made the pain worse. A bloated, rock-hard abdomen. A controlling aunt who silenced the child's cries. And a father who was entirely blind to what was happening under his own roof. Evelyn realized exactly why Daniel Mercer needed a wife who didn't frighten easily. She just hoped Daniel was the kind of man who could handle the devastating truth she was about to uncover. In the quiet gray light of early morning, before the rest of the house had begun to stir, Evelyn stood alone in the kitchen. She reached up to the high shelf and took down the small brown glass bottle. She carried it to the window to examine it in the pale light. The label wasn't printed by a pharmaceutical company or stamped by a legitimate apothecary. It was handwritten in tight, unsteady script comfort syrup for children's complaints. The fact that it was handwritten sent a cold shiver down the back of Evelyn's neck. She unstoppered the bottle and brought it to her nose. The smell hit her in two distinct layers. First came the thick, cloying sweetness of heavy molasses, but beneath that lay something sharp, medicinal, and deeply unnatural. Cautiously, Evelyn touched a tiny drop to the tip of her tongue. The sweetness was overwhelming, but a second later, a subtle numbing sensation spread across her taste buds. Her body instinctively urged her to spit it out. It wasn't a simple tonic. It was a heavy sedative, something that had absolutely no business being given to a 7-year-old child every single night for 8 months. Evelyn quickly rinsed her mouth at the sink. When she turned around, Margaret Hale was standing in the kitchen doorway. Margaret's footsteps had been completely silent. She looked at the bottle in Evelyn's hand, and then at Evelyn's face. In that suspended, breathless moment, the polite, pleasant mask Margaret wore completely vanished. What remained was the cold, hard expression of a woman fiercely defending her territory. "That's Lily's medicine," Margaret said, stepping into the room. "You shouldn't be handling it." "Who handwrote this label?" Evelyn asked, keeping her voice perfectly level. "Dr. Ferris has an arrangement with the apothecary in town. It needs to be measured correctly. Has Daniel ever actually looked at this bottle?" Margaret's chin lifted. "Daniel trusts me to manage Lily's care." She took another step forward, the pleasantness entirely stripped from her voice, leaving something raw and venomous. "You have been in this house 4 days. I have been here for 2 years. I raised that child through the worst grief of her life. I supported Daniel when he could barely stand, and you come here from Missouri with your opinions and your questions." "Her belly is getting worse," Evelyn stated flatly. 8 months of treatment, and she is in more pain than when she started. Her abdomen is distended. She passes out 20 minutes after taking this dose. What exactly is the condition Dr. Ferris diagnosed?" Margaret stepped dangerously close. "You need to be very careful about what you are implying." "I'm not implying anything," Evelyn replied, refusing to back down. "I'm asking questions because that's what a mother does." The word mother struck Margaret like a physical blow. Her eyes flashed with pure malice. "You are not her mother." "No," Evelyn agreed softly, "but I am here, and I am not leaving." Margaret snatched the bottle from the table. "I think it would be best if we agree that Lily's medical care is not your area. Daniel will agree with me. He always has." She turned and walked upstairs, her posture rigid with fury. Evelyn stood in the quiet kitchen, her heart hammering against her ribs. Margaret wasn't just a controlling aunt. She was a cornered animal. And a cornered woman with access to a compliant doctor and an overly trusting father was the most dangerous thing Evelyn had ever faced. She knew she couldn't just tell Daniel she needed undeniable proof. Late that night, when the house was dead silent, Evelyn crept back into the pantry. She found a tiny glass jar, poured no more than a teaspoon of the dark syrup into it, sealed it tight, and slipped it into the deep pocket of her dress. The next morning, Lily sat at the breakfast table, her hands pressed flat against the wood surface. Evelyn had noticed she did this to brace herself against the agonizing cramps in her stomach. Her breakfast sat untouched. Evelyn sat across from the pale, trembling child. "Lily, look at me," she said gently. "How long have you known that the medicine makes it worse?" Lily's jaw tightened. She did that heartbreaking calculation again, deciding if the truth was safe to speak. "Since the beginning," she whispered. "But Aunt Margaret says, sometimes medicine makes you feel worse before it makes you feel better. She says children feel things big, but that doesn't mean the feelings are real." "Did you tell your papa?" A look of exhausted resignation washed over the little girl's face. "Papa trusts Aunt Margaret. Aunt Margaret says if I talk too much about hurting, it makes Papa sad. And if Papa is sad—" Lily swallowed hard, her eyes brimming with tears. "He might send me away, like he sent me to stay in Cheyenne for 2 months last winter. I think I was too much trouble." Evelyn's chest tightened with a quiet, terrible fury. "Your feelings are real, Lily," Evelyn said, her voice trembling with conviction. "Your pain is real. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." When Daniel came in from the pastures later that morning, Evelyn met him at the door. "I want Lily to see a different doctor," she said plainly. Daniel frowned, removing his dusty hat. "Ferris has been the family doctor since before I married Clara. He knows Lily. He says it's a nervous stomach from grief." "Grief does not cause a child's belly to swell like she swallowed a melon," Evelyn countered. "There is a doctor in Casper, Dr. Webb. I want to take her to him." "Margaret says Webb is too new to know the territory," Daniel replied defensively. Evelyn stared at him. "Margaret would say that. I'm asking you to let me go to Casper." "Casper is a full day's ride. I can't leave the ranch right now, Evelyn." "I'm not asking you to come. I'll drive the wagon myself." Daniel sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "Evelyn, you've been here 5 days. Ferris has treated her for 8 months. And in 5 days, I have seen things that 8 months apparently haven't." Evelyn reached into her pocket, pulled out the small glass jar filled with the dark syrup, and set it down onto the wooden table with a sharp clack. Daniel stared at it. "Daniel, when is the last time you looked at her belly? Really looked?" Evelyn asked, her voice dropping to a desperate plea. Daniel looked from the jar to Evelyn's face. For the first time, the blind trust he had placed in his sister-in-law began to crack. Behind his dark eyes, Evelyn saw the first cold edge of parental terror. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. "The shelf. Last night. I want to take this to Dr. Webb. If Ferris is right, Webb will confirm it's safe, and we will all sleep better. If he can't confirm it, then we will know something we desperately need to know. Either way, Daniel, your daughter wins." Daniel picked up the small jar, turning it over in his rough, calloused hands. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Finally, he looked up, his jaw set. "Take the bay horse," he ordered. "The wagon is too slow." Evelyn was on the road within the hour. The biting Wyoming wind whipped at her face, but she rode hard, her mind racing. She knew Margaret was silencing Lily. She knew Margaret had sent the child away to Cheyenne when she asked too many questions. But why? What was the transaction happening between Margaret and Dr. Ferris? When she finally reached Casper, she found Dr. Calvin Webb in his office above the general store. He was a sharp, focused man in his late 30s, who listened to Evelyn without interrupting once. She placed the glass jar on his desk, detailed Lily's symptoms, the distended belly, and the 8 months of nightly dosing. Webb opened the jar. He smelled it, and just like Evelyn, he visibly flinched. "I need to test this properly," Dr. Webb said grimly. "Can you come back in 2 hours?" "I'll wait right here," Evelyn said, refusing to move from the wooden chair in his waiting room. 2 hours and 20 minutes later, Dr. Webb walked back out. The look on his face made Evelyn's blood run entirely cold. "It's a morphine-based compound," Webb said, his voice laced with controlled professional outrage. "Cut with alcohol and sweetened with heavy molasses. The concentration is far higher than anything sold commercially. This was prepared specifically, mixed by someone who knew exactly what they were doing to maximize its sedative effect." Evelyn's hands went numb in her lap. "Mrs. Mercer," Webb continued, leaning forward, "given the heavy dose and the 8-month duration, this child is severely chemically dependent. Her body has adapted to the narcotic. That is why she is worsening. The dose is no longer sufficient to suppress her nervous system, so her body is fighting back. The severe abdominal swelling, the paralyzing cramps, those are the symptoms of prolonged opioid exposure in a child whose organs are far too small to process it." The room fell dead silent. "Will she recover?" Evelyn choked out, her voice barely a whisper. "If it stops? Yes. Children are remarkably resilient, but the withdrawal will be brutal, and it has to stop tonight." Webb's eyes hardened. "I have suspected Dr. Ferris of maintaining corrupt arrangements for 2 years, but suspicion isn't evidence. This jar is. Tell me, Mrs. Mercer, is there someone in that house who has been directing Ferris?" Someone who had a very strong reason to keep that child quiet, sedated, and completely controllable. Evelyn thought of Margaret's cold, calculating eyes, the way she had proudly declared she ran the household, the way she fed a poisoned spoon to a grieving 7-year-old girl every single night to secure her own power. Evelyn stood up, her grief hardening into pure, unyielding iron. "Yes, Dr. Webb," she said, "there is." Evelyn rode back to the ranch faster than she had ridden out. The biting Wyoming cold whipped against her face, but she barely felt it. Her mind was racing, arranging the sequence of what she knew and what she needed to do the moment she stepped through the door. She needed Daniel to be home. She needed him to hear Dr. Webb's name and be willing to listen before Margaret could twist the narrative. She had to keep her burning rage tightly leashed because rage without facts was exactly what Margaret would use against her. But as the ranch house came into view against the lowering sun, Evelyn saw immediately that something was wrong. Daniel's horse was tied outside the barn, lathered and breathing hard, and the front door of the house was standing wide open. It was far too cold to leave a door open in Wyoming. Evelyn dismounted quickly and hurried inside. The parlor was empty. The kitchen was empty. But she could hear voices coming from upstairs. 2 voices, and neither of them was calm. She took the wooden stairs fast, her footsteps masked by the rising argument. As she reached the landing, Margaret's voice echoed sharply from the master bedroom. "You had no right to go through that room, Daniel. You had no right." "That's not what I'm asking about," Daniel's voice shot back, lower and harder than Evelyn had ever heard it. "I'm asking about these letters." Evelyn stopped in the doorway. Daniel was standing in the center of the bedroom, clutching a bundle of folded papers. His knuckles were bone white. Across from him stood Margaret. For the first time since Evelyn had arrived, Margaret Hale was not composed. Her hands hung limply at her sides, her pristine apron rumpled. Her face looked stripped bare, her calculating mask entirely shattered. "Where did you find those?" Margaret asked, her voice trembling. "In the trunk, under Clara's old quilts," Daniel spat. "Where you put things you thought I'd never look. How long were you planning to keep her on it?" "It's medicine." "How long, Margaret?" Margaret pressed her lips together. Then, in a voice that was no longer pleasant or controlled, but raw and cracking with years of buried resentment, she answered, "Until you needed me. Until this arrangement of yours fell apart the way I knew it would. Until you looked around and saw that I was the one who had been here all along." The silence that followed was absolute and suffocating. Evelyn watched Daniel's face do something very slow and very terrible. The look of a man who realizes the foundation of his life has been built on a trap door, and the person holding the lever was the one he trusted most. "You wanted her sick," Daniel whispered. It wasn't a question. It landed in the room like a heavy stone dropped into dark water. "I wanted her managed," Margaret cried out, the word infinitely worse than sick because of its precise cruelty. "She was unmanageable, Daniel. She was grief, wild, screaming and throwing things, and you were useless. You could barely stand up, and someone had to run this house." "She was 7 years old," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "She had just lost her mother, and I had just lost my wife." "Clara was my sister," Margaret shrieked, all her restrained bitterness exploding to the surface. "She was mine before she was yours. When she died, you got to be the tragic, grieving husband. Everyone felt sorry for you. They held you up and brought casseroles. But I sat in that kitchen and ran this house. I held that screaming child, and no one asked how I was. No one." "So you drugged her?" Both Daniel and Margaret whipped around. Evelyn stepped fully into the room. Margaret's expression cycled violently through shock, rapid calculation, and finally, a sickening kind of relief, the relief of a woman exhausted from carrying a monstrous secret, even if the weight was being lifted by her own destruction. "You don't understand what it was like," Margaret hissed at Evelyn. "You come here after 4 days with your opinions." "I understand exactly what morphine does to a child," Evelyn interrupted, her voice a deadly calm. She walked past Margaret and stood firmly beside Daniel. "I have just come from Dr. Webb in Casper." He tested the syrup. "It is a highly concentrated narcotic. He is putting his findings in writing and will provide formal testimony to the territorial court, and he has already stated that he's had questions about Dr. Ferris's corrupt practices for 2 years. Your arrangement is finished." Margaret absorbed the words like physical blows. Her legs seemed to simply give out, and she sank onto the edge of the bed, staring blankly at her trembling hands. "I never wanted to hurt her," she whispered. "That is the truth." "I believe you," Evelyn said, her tone neither kind nor cruel, just absolute. "But that doesn't change what happened. You loved her. But she has been in agony every morning for 8 months because of it. Both of those things are true." Margaret looked up, her face suddenly looking incredibly old. "What are you going to do?" Evelyn looked at Daniel. He was staring at the letters in his hand, a man realizing that his grief-induced absence had allowed a predator to silence his child. "Daniel," Evelyn said quietly, drawing his eyes, "Lily's medicine stops tonight. She's going to feel much worse before she feels better. She needs watching. She needs water. And she needs you. Really need you. Not the version of you that lets someone else handle the hard parts. Can you do that?" Daniel's jaw tightened. The hesitation Evelyn had seen on her first day was gone, replaced by a fierce, costly determination. "Yes," he said. Evelyn nodded once. She turned her steely gaze back to the woman on the bed. "You need to leave this house, Margaret. Tonight." Margaret closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "I know." Without another word, Evelyn turned and walked down the hall to Lily's room. She pushed the door open. Lily was sitting on the edge of her bed, her hands pressed flat against the mattress, bracing against the ever-present cramps. The little girl looked up, her gray eyes searching Evelyn's face. "Is it bad?" Lily asked softly. Evelyn crossed the room and sat beside her, taking the child's small, cold hand. "It's going to be hard for a little while," Evelyn said truthfully. "But after the hard part, you're going to feel better than you have in a very long time. The medicine is done, Lily. No more." Evelyn felt the girl's hand tense. It was the posture of a child who had learned that good news was usually a trap. "What if I feel worse first?" "You probably will," Evelyn said gently. "And I'm going to be right here." "All night?" "All night." Slowly, carefully, as if she wasn't sure it was allowed, Lily leaned against Evelyn's arm. Evelyn sat solid as a mountain, wrapping her warmth around the fragile child. Downstairs, the heavy front door opened and closed. Margaret Hale was gone. The first night without the morphine was the longest night of Evelyn's life. By midnight, Lily woke up shaking. It wasn't the gentle shivering of a bad dream, it was full body, violent convulsions. It was the horrifying reaction of a tiny nervous system that had been chemically suppressed for 8 months, suddenly cut loose into the jarring reality of withdrawal. Evelyn was already in the chair beside the bed. She immediately gathered the thrashing child into her arms. "I'm here," she soothed, holding her tight. "I've got you. This is your body getting well." "It hurts," Lily sobbed through violently chattering teeth. "It hurts everywhere. Make it stop." "I can't make it stop," Evelyn said, her own heart breaking, refusing to offer a lie. "But I can stay right here while it happens." Lily grabbed Evelyn's hand with a grip that had nothing childlike about it. It was the desperate grip of someone drowning in deep water. Evelyn held back with everything she had, keeping her own body perfectly still so the child had something solid to anchor against. At 12:30, Daniel appeared in the doorway. He hadn't slept. He stood staring at his daughter writhing in agony, his face twisting with a guilt too private to witness. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice raw. "Sit on her other side," Evelyn instructed firmly. "Just sit there. She needs to know you're here." Daniel crossed the room, sat on the edge of the mattress, and placed a large, trembling hand on Lily's damp hair. The little girl turned toward him, eyes squeezed shut in pain, and pressed her face against his arm. Daniel let out a low, shattered sound from deep in his chest and pulled his daughter close. They sat like that for hours, the rancher and the mail-order bride flanking the broken child, holding her together through the storm. By 3 a.m, the violent shaking had lessened to a dull tremor. By 4, it was only a slight twitching in her small hands. When the first pale gray light of the Wyoming dawn crept through the frosted window, Lily was finally asleep. It wasn't the slack, deadened chemical drop of the past 8 months. It was real, exhausted, healing human sleep. Daniel looked across the bed at Evelyn. He looked a decade older than he had the day before. "She's going to be all right," Evelyn whispered. It was a promise, not a prediction. "How long will this go on?" Webb said 3 to 5 days of withdrawal. "Then the worst is over. The belly swelling will take a few weeks to go down, but she'll eat, really eat." Daniel stared at his daughter's peaceful face. "I should have seen it. I trusted the wrong person because it was easier than paying attention. I was so tired after Clara died. I just let Margaret run everything." He swallowed hard. "That's not an excuse." "No," Evelyn agreed softly. "It isn't." Daniel nodded once, accepting the heavy truth of his failure without trying to deflect it. And in that moment of absolute accountability, Evelyn decided that Daniel Mercer was going to be all right too. "Get some sleep, Daniel," she said. "I'll stay with her." He stood up slowly, looking at Evelyn with profound, wordless gratitude, and left the room. Evelyn sat back in the chair, watching the child's chest rise and fall naturally. The immediate crisis was over, but the war wasn't completely won. Ferris was still a doctor. The corrupt arrangement still existed. But as the sun fully crested over the vast Wyoming plains, Evelyn Harper knew one thing for certain: no one would ever harm this child again, as long as she drew breath. The morning after the worst of the withdrawal, Evelyn did not rest. While Lily slept, guarded by the trusted ranch hand Asa, Evelyn sat at the kitchen table and read the 4 letters Daniel had found in Margaret's trunk. They painted a chilling picture of control disguised as care. The first letter asked Dr. Ferris for something to help a grieving child sleep. The second asked for an increased dose. But the third letter made Evelyn's blood run cold. It stated that Daniel was looking for a mail-order bride, and that Lily's treatment must continue so Margaret could use the child's chemical dependency as legal leverage to stay in the house. The final letter, written just 6 weeks ago, simply read, "She is coming. Keep the schedule." "I need to go to the sheriff," Evelyn told Daniel. "The sheriff in Dunmore is Ferris's brother-in-law," Daniel said, his face shadowed with exhaustion. "We go to Lander. Sheriff Cole is a fair man. I'm taking you." In Lander, Sheriff Cole, a broad, deliberate man, read Dr. Webb's medical analysis and Margaret's letters. He set them down heavily on his desk. "Ferris will lose his license, and there will likely be criminal charges," Cole said grimly. "Margaret Hale's liability is complicated since she didn't administer it herself, but these letters prove her malicious intent. I'll send a deputy for Ferris today." When they returned to the ranch, Lily was awake. She was shaky and pale, but her eyes were clearer than Evelyn had ever seen them. "Is Aunt Margaret in trouble?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed. She had decided to always give this child the truth. "Yes, she is. Because of the medicine." "She said it was helping me," Lily whispered, trying to make sense of the betrayal. "I know she did," Evelyn said gently. "But it wasn't." "I knew it wasn't," the little girl confessed, looking down at her shaking hands. "I told her it made my belly worse, but she said children don't know what's good for them. Don't forget that she loves me, Evelyn." Evelyn looked at the 7-year-old child who was grappling with a truth that took adults decades to understand. "She does," Evelyn agreed softly. "But love can hurt you, Lily. It hurts you when love decides it knows better than you do. When love stops listening, that is not the kind of love you will have in this house anymore. Every time you hurt, you tell me, and I will listen. Every time." Lily looked up, and for the first time, The heavy, painted-shut window of her guarded heart seemed to crack open. "My belly really does hurt right now," she whispered. "I know." Evelyn smiled gently. "Thank you for telling me." The next 3 days were grueling, unglamorous, and deeply real. Lily cried not the silent, polite weeping of a hidden child, but loud, unself-conscious crying that echoed through the house. And every time she cried, Evelyn and Daniel were there. They took turns holding her, rubbing her back, anchoring her through the storm. By the 3rd day, the swelling in Lily's abdomen had visibly reduced. She ate half a bowl of real food, warm bread and butter, and actually kept it down. Dr. Webb rode out from Casper to check on her, confirming she was recovering beautifully. He also brought news. Dr. Ferris had surrendered his medical license rather than face a territorial hearing. His records had been seized, revealing 3 other children in the region who had been poisoned with the same compound. Daniel had to walk out of the room when he heard that. When he returned, his eyes were red, but he carried a new, hardened resolve. The threat was neutralized. The shadow was gone. In the 4th week, the house fundamentally changed. The silence that had once felt threatening now felt comfortable, and Lily began to talk. She didn't just answer questions anymore. She initiated conversations without scanning the room for permission. One morning, she marched into the kitchen while Evelyn was kneading dough. "My mama used to make bread," Lily announced, pulling up a stool. "She used to let me push my hands in the dough. She smelled like lavender." "That's a beautiful thing to remember," Evelyn said, making room. Lily plunged her small hands into the flour, laughing as she completely ruined the shape of the loaf. Evelyn didn't correct her. She just pushed the dough back into place, laughing along with her. But it was Sunday night that completely undid Evelyn. She was sitting alone in the parlor, mending a shirt by the firelight, when Lily came down the stairs in her nightgown. She walked up to Evelyn, holding something carefully in both hands. It was a small tin photograph in an oval frame. "This is my mama," Lily said softly, holding it out. Evelyn put her mending down and took the picture. Clara Mercer had been a beautiful woman with Lily's intelligent gray eyes. "She's beautiful," Evelyn said. "I wanted you to know what she looked like," Lily said, her voice entirely composed and undeniably sincere. "Because you're going to be my mother now. I think you should know what she looked like." Evelyn stared at the child, her heart swelling until it physically ached. She moved over on the settee and patted the space beside her. Lily climbed up, tucking herself under Evelyn's arm, and for the next 40 minutes, she talked about Clara. She poured out every hoarded hidden memory until she finally fell asleep right there, leaning heavily against Evelyn. Daniel walked in 20 minutes later. He stopped in the doorway, staring at the mail-order bride holding his sleeping daughter, the photograph of his late wife resting safely in the child's lap. He crossed the room, gently took Lily, and carried her up to bed. When he returned, he sat across from Evelyn in the quiet parlor. "She showed you Clara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She keeps that picture hidden under her pillow. She's never shown it to anyone." "She wanted me to know what she looked like," Evelyn said softly. Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, looking at Evelyn with the unglamorous honesty of a man who didn't have pretty words, but meant the plain ones. "I know this isn't what you pictured when you answered my letter, Evelyn, but I'd like to do right by you. If you'll let me properly write, not just an arrangement, the real thing, I'm asking you." Evelyn looked at the firelight, at the man who had stayed awake for 3 nights holding his daughter, at the quiet safe house around them. "Yes," she said, "all right." The final piece of their new life clicked into place the next morning. Lily ran outside at dawn, bursting with eager, uncontained excitement. Evelyn followed her to the edge of the pasture where a mare had recently foaled. Remembering the gentle instructions Asa had given her, Lily held out her hand, perfectly flat. The tiny brown foal stretched its neck, sniffed her palm, and didn't run away. Lily went completely still, her face breaking into an expression of pure, uncomplicated joy. "She trusts me," Lily whispered. "She does," Evelyn smiled. Daniel walked up behind them. He stood on Lily's other side and held his hand out, but the foal ignored him, snorting and turning away. Lily threw her head back and laughed, a full-body, unself-conscious laugh of a child who had finally forgotten how to be careful. At breakfast, Lily ate a massive plate of food. Daniel joked that he was going to have to buy every sack of flour in Wyoming to keep her fed. Lily giggled with a mouthful of bread. Then she stopped chewing. She looked across the table at Evelyn, her gray eyes clear and serious. "Will you stay even when things aren't hard anymore?" Lily asked. "Even when everything is just normal?" The kitchen went dead quiet. Daniel froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Evelyn looked at the little girl whose life she had fought to save. She answered with the absolute, unshakable truth. "I am not staying because things are hard," Evelyn said firmly. "I am not staying because you need me. I am staying because I choose to, because this is where I belong, because you are my family." She looked at Daniel, and then back to Lily. "That doesn't change when things get easier. That's the whole point." Lily stared at her for a long moment, processing the weight of the promise. Then, a soft, radiant smile broke across her face. "Okay," she said, and happily went back to her breakfast. Outside, the Wyoming wind blew across the vast, indifferent plains, carrying the winter chill away. But inside the warm ranch house, a father, a daughter, and a sturdy, fearless woman from Missouri sat together in the morning light, no longer strangers, no longer surviving, but finally, and forever, home.